Most companies have a GTM strategy, but very few have a GTM that actually gets the money. If your go-to-market feels like a series of broken spreadsheets and missed targets, it's time for a system update. Welcome to GTM, get the money live. I'm Chris Ryan and I'm Lee Parillo, your hosts, and we're here to install the operating system for your revenue. We're moving past the theory and getting into the high-stakes execution of what it takes to scale in 2020 fast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome out to GTM, Get the Money Live. Another great show, another great guest. Very excited today to bring in Cal Thomas, who I will introduce in 1 second. But if you haven't tuned into the show before, it is all about helping people solve revenue problems. So if you're a company leader, C-suite, anybody that has a revenue problem, which is all of us, we're here to help you solve it. But here's the difference. We firmly believe in solving revenue for good and revenue for growth. Without further ado, Sandler superstar, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cal Thomas.
Hey, I don't know about superstar, but always great to talk to you, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I've seen you speak, obviously, at some of the Sandler summits. You've been a Sandler guy for how long now?
12, 15, depending on your math, years.
Somewhere around there. Decade plus, we'll call it. So Cal's been great. Cal's been one of my coaches over the last several years. Really great guy, very insightful. Again, just looks at the world a little bit differently. So really excited to have you on the show. So for the people that haven't tuned in before, what we typically do is we go over one big question. We'll go back and forth and just have a conversation. You work with business owners, typically who are frustrated by lengthening sales cycles, unpredictable revenue, and unpredictable pipelines, and sometimes reps that are unwilling to prospect. Walk me through your process. When you go into a struggling sales team or a struggling company with sales, what's the biggest gaps that you see that impact revenue?
I could take the bait too much there and say that they lack a process and lack accountability. But frankly, they're often just not doing the behaviors, the good sales behaviors that we know that we need to do every day, like pick up the phone, like make introductions, like have a cadence of things that we need to do, get in front of, and you mentioned earlier, get in front of the right prospects. And a lot of them, and Chris, you will find this hard to believe because this isn't your problem or for your business, but they don't really know, they're not crystal clear on who their ideal client profile is. They're not sure. Or they say anyone, or they say, well, it could be this or it could be this. So I think a lot of it is lack of clarity around who, and then a process of really how.
And we talk about ICP quite a bit on this show. And fundamental, if you know who you're going after, it's much easier to have those conversations. But for the companies that maybe have an ICP, they probably have a general idea of who they want to go after. It may not be perfectly dialed in like we would like it. But why aren't they doing the behaviors? Because it sounds like they know what to do. They're just not going through the motions on doing something.
A lot of them in the better ones, Chris. Yeah. And as you know, we work with good companies and make them better. We don't work with the ones that aren't that great and try and fix them. That's not always the most productive. So I think, well, you'll remember, right? We have a triangle we use, and it's called the BAT triangle, success triangle. The attitude or the belief systems we have, obviously the behaviors, and a lot of people know what the behaviors are. And then there's also technique. Because I think a lot of teams get hung up in, hey, sales is all about technique. And I would argue that's a third, maybe less, but it's the mindset and the belief system and having equal business stature with prospects, with owners of companies, with whoever their ICP, ideal client profile is. I think that's a big one, is not feeling that they're at the same stature, the same level as a human being. They're just salespeople.
Right, because sales is a dirty word, right? And that's, everybody's had this like preconceived notion of what it is. So you mentioned the BAT triangle, the success triangle, which if you're not familiar with Sandler, just Google it. There's images everywhere that will break this down because it's frameworks within frameworks. That's really amazing. But I do think you're right with technique. Everybody's trying to game the system. Go on LinkedIn, go on Instagram, go anywhere. It's always like, here's a sales trick that'll trick your prospect into doing business with you. At the end of the day, it's about helping people, and then, hopefully like that relationship will continue. But from a attitude perspective, like, are they scared? Like, is it fearful of success, fear of failure? Like let's talk about the attitude part of that for a second.
Those are good ones, and that's a good lead in. I think it's both. Um, People don't think about fear of success. What if I do really well, or if I exceed my quota, or my business grows fast? Um, but I think more, what if I face personal rejection from somebody? So my belief, Chris, is there's no such thing as rejection in sales. I
Hmm.
do the behaviors, I do them with the best technique, I do it with the best mindset, and some will, some won't. So what? Someone else is waiting to have a meaningful conversation with me. And that's it. I mean, that's a lot of the mindset I believe is critical and that we don't see a lot, my experience.
It's often very hard though, because as a salesperson, sales function in general, like you get more no's than yes, even if you're a phenomenal salesperson, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'll chime in some Sandler here, but it is hard when you work very, very hard for a deal, or you think you're a perfect solution and you really could help this company, and then they say no. Like you have to kind of rub some dirt on it and get up. But like, are there any tips you would recommend for attitude if you're kind of not this unbelievably tough person that could just kind of pick up and not have it affect them?
Yeah, I love how you put that. I mean, there are a lot of things people talk about having affirmations and, look yourself in the mirror and do that. But I think, Chris, having goals is the number one thing that gets that attitude with those belief systems. And I think of the attitude is our self concept, our self worth, how we feel about ourselves, regardless of the role that we're playing at that moment. We actually have a term, and Sandler called IR theory, identity versus role theory. The world wants us to believe that our value is determined by how well we perform in our role, our sales role, our mom role, our golf role. But psychology really says the opposite. It was how we feel and what we believe about ourselves, that is what impacts how we perform in any of our roles. Because if I think I'm an at least or not very good or not very nice, I'll never succeed in any role, or certainly not to a very high level.
Good point. And the IR theory, like I've gone pretty deep in that, because as the organization leader and the owner, you tend to blend that really quickly. Like, well, if the company's not doing well, it's my fault because this, and all of the reasons. But understanding that who you are and what you do, I think is maybe how I would define that, is easier to separate. But still, you still have to have some level of adversity. I mean, I think if you learn the adversity problem or solution, like, do you deal with that a lot, or do you coach around adversity? Not just like you have this beautiful mindset and you can overcome things, or like, are there like tips you could provide to handle adversity?
Yeah, so I won't say out loud or being recorded to just deal with it because that's not an effective way to do it. Um, but like I say, you got to rub a little dirt in it, get up and do the next thing. And it is hard not to take it personally. But if I'm going to fail, if that's the mindset, I want to do it pretty quickly.
Hmm.
I had one. What's today? It was last Friday, as a matter of fact, and we've been going along for quite a while, too long, with a nice prospect. Seemed like we're pretty ready to go, and then they just pulled the plug and said, "Nope, can't do it. Not going to do it. No explanation. No anything else." Then it stung a little bit, but that's my cue to go pick up the phone and get out and meet and ask for referrals and just keep going. So there is some mental toughness there, but it's also following the process. But if I can get somebody to a no, or I can get them to agree that they don't have a problem big enough for us to solve, or if I can convince them that they don't want to spend that much money to invest when there's not an ROI, I'm great. Some will. People have to be willing and able, Chris. And I think that's right. A lot of my belief, I think everybody needs Sandler training. I don't care what they do, what they sell, what they lead, how they communicate. Everybody needs it. But not everybody wants it. And not everybody is willing to make that investment of time, effort, and money.
I would agree with you. I think everybody needs Sandler too. I mean, we've been in Sandler, my company, for better part of a decade. And it's the same thing. There's obviously, you guys evolve in your concepts and methodologies, but we keep learning the same thing because it takes a while to master equitable business status. adversity, attitude, behaviors. And I think what I love about Sandler is your team coaches to go for the no. And that was new for me. I didn't, going back in again, I'm not a great salesperson now, but I certainly wasn't when I started. But coming in and going for the no, it just saves you a ton of time because you can identify that they don't have the resources or potentially it's not a right deal, or maybe you can't help them. I had a prospect recently and these guys were as perfect of a fit as you could be. And it was great. And same to your point, it went on very long. And I was like, I let it go, I think a little bit longer because they were a perfect fit. But I finally pulled the plug. I said, you know what? Like they didn't have the time and the resources to be able to implement the solution we provided. I was like, hey guys, maybe in the future. And again, it stung because I pulled the deal away because it just felt like a really good opportunity for us. But I did follow your instructions and I went for my own no. So I don't know if that's part of the rule system.
And I think, Chris, that mindset, and obviously you've been doing this a long time, it does take practice. You got to do it over and over. But I feel a lot better about myself when I can see the writing on the wall and I decide to pull the plug rather than them pull the plug, or rather than me chasing them and them ghosting, right? We don't allow chasing and ghosting in Sandler. It's not the way it works. Most of us are pretty good at it. But if I can make that decision, I feel better about myself. That helps, that attitude, that belief system for me, knowing that no's an option and I can see it and I'm okay with it. It helps if you have a very full pipeline, but it doesn't matter. You still have to follow the same process, in my opinion.
So one of my favorite takeaways from working with Sandler in general is before, again, I'm better now, ladies and gentlemen. But before I was so particular about certain deals. And then I think you and another one of our coaches, Matt, said it's because you don't have enough at bats. And it's a good segue from attitude to behaviors, because if you're doing the behaviors, and I'll let you speak about this and tell us your knowledge around behavior, then the sales will come and you won't be so married to those one-off deals. You're like, you know what, that's great, but I've been prospecting XYZ for the last 2 months in conjunction. So let's talk about behaviors, I guess.
Good. This came up this morning. I have a relatively new person in my organization. His job is to prospect and sell, and he'll get into the training at some point. But I asked him a question. I said, what's the point of making and doing these prospecting behaviors? Some are warm calls, some are cold calls, some are all that mix of different behaviors. And he said, to get an appointment. I said, think about that for a minute. So we agreed the point is to do the behaviors. If I do them well, I'll have some success. If I pull in some good technique on top of that, I'll have more success and I'll hone my behaviors. And if I've got the mindset and the belief system that goes along with that no is fine, those all come together. That makes us more willing to do the behaviors. And the more behaviors I do, I feel good about that. And that changes my mindset. You asked this question earlier, it just popped into my head. I have a belief and a philosophy. My belief is that our roles, certainly my role in sales, is to help people make a decision. That's it. We're not going to convince, right? That's a Sandler tenet. People buy for their reasons and not ours. We got to find a problem. We got to help them figure it out. But my job is to help people make a decision. My philosophy is it's their time, money, and effort, so they get to vote yes or no. And I'm good with either one, as long as we get to the no pretty quickly and I don't waste anybody's, including my own time.
Great input, Cal. So you're talking about the BAT triangle. Again, if you're not familiar with behaviors, attitudes, techniques, and how these frameworks work together, I strongly suggest you look up Sandler or contact Cal. He's a master at this stuff. But when there's behaviors, attitudes, and techniques, and I think this is a conversation that comes up in class all the time, which one do you do first? Is it the behaviors? Is it the attitude? Or is it the technique?
Well, conventional or traditional salespeople say it's all technique. I need to convince people, right? We talked about that a little earlier. So if anyone ever comes and visits a class, you'll know the answer to this. There are 3 triangles within that big triangle: the attitude, the behavior, and the technique triangle, and they're all equilateral triangles. So they're all equally important. What most people take a little while to grasp is it's not my belief systems. It's not, I have to go do this. I'm a good, smart person. I will then do the behaviors. And actually, the other pushes the other. Behaviors push the belief system and how we feel. Right. So if I go do some great behaviors and I start getting some different results, I'm going to be more comfortable now doing those behaviors. because my mindset has changed a little bit, right? And I will start to have more successes. I'm mostly going to have some technique. So the three of them are inextricably combined and attached to each other. If you just do one, and we do a couple whole sessions, which you've seen on that, on the interrelationships, if I just do great technique, I'm not going to, it's not going to work. I have to do the behaviors so I can practice that technique, and I have to have that belief system that allows me to get the no's that we were talking about, and no's are just perfectly fine.
And that's the brilliance of the system, is that they all work together. But not only do they just work together, it's not 1, 2, 3. It's that they amplify one another. And I know, again, it feels like a flywheel to me. I'm an old school HubSpot guy. And obviously, Sandler went from the submarine to the flywheel in general. But maybe the BAT triangle should be a flywheel now that we're thinking about it.
I don't know. I don't want to have to change graphics again, Chris. But, I think it's all flywheel, and it's building momentum. It's absolutely is. And then we get better, and then it's not as hard. I spoke to some brand new Sandler people this morning, and with some basic rules, which I think are the same in everybody's business, right? Do the behaviors. For us, it's be a product of our own product. Uh, don't get creative. Just follow the process. You hear this every week. Somebody says, I didn't follow the process and I messed it up, or I said something I shouldn't have and I messed it up. But hey, I followed the process and it was really hard. And I pushed them to a no, and they said, no, that's not what I meant. We'll go find the money and we will find it in some other way. But if we follow the process and we stick to it, because buyers, by the way, Chris, I think you know this about me, but my career started as a purchasing guy. So I don't even like salespeople. Or the traditional ones, not the ones watching today. But then I met Sandler, and I thought, boy, if we could get everyone to behave this way and act this way and have this attitude and do the behaviors, boy, the world of sales would be a much more pleasant place to live in.
It would certainly be much nicer to buy a car, because I think even when I went into Sandler, and I said it earlier in the show, sales is a dirty word. You come in thinking it like of that grimy salesperson, the snake oil salesperson that is just doing whatever to get money out of you. But again, thankfully to Sandler and a testament to you, you learn that, again, you're helping people, and then you're helping them buy, you're helping them solve their problem. And then obviously you should get rewarded for it. At the end of the day, we're all salespeople. We need to get revenue into our businesses so we stay. But if you have a solution that you can help other people, and it's a helpful atmosphere, it's not this guarded, I'll use Sandler language, buyer seller dance. It's like, hey guys, like, you're a professional company, I'm a professional company. You need A, I have B. Maybe we can come together and find C together. So again, that probably didn't make any sense because it didn't after I said it, but I think you get the gist of where I'm going. So I love all of this. I love the behaviors, and I do think, you're a baseball guy, so I want to, before we switch to the takeaway, the behaviors, you hear it over and over and over and over in sports. They practice one thing to the minute level, and they just keep doing it over. And that may be technique, but I remember this, and I remember this growing up, and I remember Don Mattingly, and batting champ, huge Yankees guy. I know you're a Red Sox guy, different conversation. But I remember a reporter asking him, and he was slumping after 100 bats. And he's like, you're going to judge me on 100 bats? He goes, come to me when I hit 500. He's like, let's talk when we're actually real. He ended up winning the batting title that year. So, I mean, it goes to, like, once you get some success, and then this flywheel triangle, whatever we're going to call it, they all work together. So again, whether you like Don Mattingly or not, he was my favorite player growing up. And that always resonated with me since, 86 or whenever it was. But
I have great respect for all people who are really good at what they do. Musicians, even if it's a sports team, it's not my favorite. It doesn't matter, but it's doing it well. And Sandler rule is we just paraphrase it actually better than I will, but it's sales is a conversation between adults to get to the truth. And the truth may be they just realized they needed us for a long time. And you've been doing it close to 10 years. We've got clients that have been 3, 5, 12, about one's 15 years, not every day, but they stick with it because I want to practice. I say, it's like it's my sales gym. It's the Sandler gym. I have to go. Otherwise I get out of practice. I don't do the behaviors. My technique slips. I get in my own head and I think no's are terrible. I don't get upfront contracts, all the Sandler stuff. So they really need to do that.
Well, the constant coaching helps so much because to your point, we all kind of go a little rogue. Whether you're in the gym or you're playing sports, if you don't have a coach kind of course correcting you, then you tend to just make something up and say, "Oh, maybe this will work," or "Maybe this will work." And that's what I used to do, and I still, again, arguably, probably still do that today. But the reinforcement with Sandler is so important. I love the frameworks, I love the methodologies, I love the psychology. All that's great. The reinforcement is what lands me sales because it keeps me accountable to the process and to the framework I know I should be following. But for some reason, something popped in my head. I think I should do something different. So again, kudos to you in the program.
Yeah, it's fun, and then it just becomes habit. It's just what you do. My wife said yesterday, said, "We just got in the car, and you did an upfront contract to make sure we know what our conversation will be out. Are you serious?" Like, I just want to be sure. I'm not always sure. I don't communicate that well, right? I have to blame myself because she's a great communicator. She might see this, but you sit down for lunch. When we started this call, you did an upfront contract and told me what to expect and what the expectations were. It's very clear. We have no mutual mystification. We know what we're here for, and we know what's going to happen or what's not going to happen. How much simpler does that get?
I'm really excited I did that because I didn't know I was doing an upfront contract at the time. So again, I'm like actually pretty proud of myself for starting the show off that way.
Memory. It just makes sense.
It does make sense, and I think you follow Chris Voss or any of the other, the coaches, and they tell you the same thing. It's like use this in regular day life and everyday life. I think my wife is probably like your wife. You start to recognize the things that are happening, and they'll call you out on it. But it still is the fastest way to get the information for two parties, whether it's personal and professional. So again, some people may disagree, but
When the young lady, relatively new mom, came in, and we start off all our sessions with wins and victories, and she said, "It was the best Thanksgiving of my life." And of course, I said, "Why was that?" I had an upfront contract with my father-in-law. We were very clear with the children what the rules were. Uh, my brother's new girlfriend, I just kept reversing her and asking her questions, so I learned a lot about her. She had a Sandler Thanksgiving. Nobody knew it but her and her 9-year-old daughter. She listens in. But yeah, it's fabulous because what I love, and you mentioned it too before, is all the things we do and teach, the mindset, belief system, some of the techniques, certainly behaviors, they apply to everything. Sales is just one of the best applications for it, but the things we talk about every day apply to all aspects of life, which is why I, in large part, call it a communication program. And some of our best salespeople are very entrenched technical engineers who literally cannot say the word sales. They choke on it. But they've learned the system, they've learned the process, they've learned how to ask questions and not go for a solution. And they are so incredibly effective. And you've met some of them.
and that's the difference between an untrained salesperson and a trained sales. Like, granted, they both may have success different ways, but the process goes much faster if you understand what you're doing. And again, it's not sales the bad way, right? It's not car sales, not to pick on car salesmen, but they still do it. It's just about learning like how to communicate with one another to get to the brass tacks, so you really understand what the problem is you're trying to solve. Can you solve the problem for them? Are they willing to invest the resources of time and money to be able to solve that problem? Again, other than that, it's just like a gut feeling, and we go on rapport, and hopefully the contract comes in, and that's where a lot of companies get into trouble.
Yeah. Oh, it was a great meeting. They really liked me. Well, that's one of your earlier questions. What really holds things up and causes people not to hit their revenue goals? I think, other than mindset and belief systems in themselves, sorry folks, but it's my evidence, is not understanding the buyer's decision-making process, which involves people, processes, a whole lot of stuff. And I see with my clients, especially the bigger ones, their deals are slipping. They didn't make the quarter. They didn't close this month. They got to wait till January. So there's some behavior problem there, not holding them accountable. And we need to hold our prospects accountable and get them to make decisions. That's our job. But if we don't understand their process and how they make decisions, it's usually so we didn't ask, because they would be, if we're doing a good job of asking questions, they're going to tell us because we've done a bunch of other things that made them comfortable and we weren't pushing. So I'll stop that part there. But understanding the decision-making process, I think, is one of the most critical things.
Well, I think it's a testament back to the system and the framework. I'm a huge fan of frameworks. And I think that's one part of the submarine because that's what I learned on. And these are levers that you can just adjust. And it's not like you have to go and reinvent the entire wheel or the submarine in this case, but it's just a lever you need to work on that will help progress the deal or save you time and save your prospect time. So this is great, Kyle. I mean, we could talk Sandler all day. What's one takeaway?
Good questions, so that makes it easy.
We're trying. So, what's one takeaway? So if you're a struggling salesperson or a struggling sales leader, which are probably two different problems, what's one thing that they could do today? So you know what? If you don't do anything else, at least remember this one point. What would you say to that?
Go get 20 no's. And after you've done that, go get 20 no's in a row, and it'll be really hard to do, and you're going to end up with yeses. But you had a goal to get 20 no's. You're going to feel good about yourself because you hit your goal. But the yeses will start to come.
Oh, I love it. All right. So 20 no's, and then the yeses will come. All right. I didn't expect that. So, Cal, every episode we do a mystery question, and I am so glad you brought up the BAT triangle. None of this is rehearsed, ladies and gentlemen, but my question is around the BAT triangle. So, obviously, you coach about success. We talked about it the entire show. Now, personal question. Now, imagine you're on a lifeboat with 3 salespeople, and you can only take one with you, but you have to negotiate a rescue. Who would you take? And you have 3 options. Would you take the one with, let's say, terrible behavior? Would you take someone with a bad attitude? Or would you take someone with 0 technique? So bad behavior, poor attitude, or no technique.
Oh, boy. I didn't expect that. That's the reverse of what I would have expected. I would say I would take the one with poor technique because maybe they've got some behaviors. Maybe they've got some good self-esteem stuff. They just didn't know how to do it. They learned from bad trainers, or they learned from their grandfather who, was in Glengarry Glen Ross or something. So I'd take the technique out. It's important, but I'd bank on the other 2.
I would also take technique. I think you're spot on. You can't, somebody has a bad attitude and you need to negotiate a rescue. Probably not going to happen. Like poor technique, at least you're there to work together. So, all right. So good answer. I know it was a little curveball for the BAT triangle, but Cal,
stump the Sandler guy, which is great fun.
So, I mean, I won't even ask about the 10 billion Sandler rules, which is a whole other episode, which we could talk about. But Cal, if people are looking to connect you, where's the best place? Your website, LinkedIn. Like if people want to say, hey, I really like that Cal guy. I'd like to hear more about him. What's the best option?
In the odd chance that happens, Chris, because I've just dispelled a bunch of myths that people still believe in, which is okay. I'm easy. I'm cal.thomas@sandler.com. My company name happens to be Tailwind. So if you're a Googler or a ChatGPT person or other generative AI, look for Tailwind Sandler. We'll come up together. And we happen to be in Orrstown, northern New Jersey. So if you put a couple of those things in, you'll find us. And if you pick up the phone and give me a call, I'd probably be happy to invite you to sit in on a program. And you might even see Chris there. Who knows?
Yeah, just don't judge me by what I say I do versus what happens in class, because
he's actually quite good. I've seen him.
Yeah, sometimes, but I appreciate it. Well, Cal, thank you very much for coming on the show. Love the knowledge. Thank you for all of the sharing. I will put all of your information on screen. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever need a referral or testimonial, I can tell you firsthand what it's been like the last 6 to 8 years working with Cal. So, ladies and gentlemen, another great show. I know we talked a lot about Sandler, but it is a vehicle that will help you get revenue in your business, and hopefully you do something good with that revenue. Ladies and gentlemen, GTM, Get the Money Live with Chris Ryan and Cal Thomas. Thanks, Cal.
We go